What is going on, guys? My name is Brent and welcome to part 2 of my how to create Flappy Birds tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about game states, orthogonal cameras, and a basic game loop. Okay, before we get coding, let's talk some details. What is a game state? A game state is basically a state of your game. You can have menu states, the actual play state where you're actually playing the game. You can have a credit state and high scores, etc. So in this example, you can see a very rudimentary menu state with a play button here. So this would be a menu state. When I click that button, it transitions to the game state. And there can be a variety of other states. And while we're looking at this screen, let's talk about a game world, okay? Now, a game world is a large world. In our case, it could go on for a long amount of time, and we want to just show the user a specific area in that world, a rectangular area. And how do we do that? We do that with a camera. Now, the camera has a viewport of a specific height and width, and it only shows that height and width of our game world to the user through the user's window. And one more thing I want to address before we get into coding is the basic game loop. Now, a game loop has two main parts, an update method and a render method. The update method does all the calculations in order for the render method to draw pictures. So an update method would include things like jumping the character up in the screen, how many pixels, doing the calculations for gravity to bring a character back down, or to adjust the pipes going left and right, where the ground needs to be and stuff like that. Now, the render method, all its purposes is to draw things on the screen. It does not need to include any math or anything like that. It just takes objects of our game world and draws them to the screen. So with all that information in mind, let's create a new package in our core in Java here, and we're going to call it states. Now, inside states, we'll create a new Java class and call it state. And state is going to be an abstract class because we don't want to instantiate any instances of state. We'll create things that extend state and create those. The first thing a state is going to have is a camera, as we talked about. Each state needs a camera to locate a position in the world. So we'll do protected orthographic camera and call that cam. The next thing it's going to need is a mouse or some sort of pointer material. So we're going to create a protected vector 3, and a vector 3 is basically an XYZ coordinate system. And we'll call that mouse. And then finally, protected, and we're going to create this later in our next tutorial, game state manager, GSM. And a game state manager is a way to manage our states so we can put a state on top of a state. Say we have a pause state, it would pop up ahead of the current game state and do some sort of functionality. So let's create our constructor here. We'll do protected state, and it'll take in a game state manager, GSM, and we'll say this.gsm equals GSM. And then let's create a cam equals new orthographic camera. And then mouse equals new vector 3. And then what we're going to do now is set our methods here. So protected abstract void, and the first one will be handle input, and I'll show you why. Those are not two of the main states that we talked about, or the main parts of the game loop that we talked about earlier, but it will be included. Public abstract void update. An update is going to take in a delta time, and a delta time is the difference between one frame rendered and the next frame rendered. And then public abstract void render, and it will take in a sprite batch, and And a sprite batch is basically a container for everything that we need to render to the screen, all of our textures and stuff like that. And it actually basically renders everything to the screen in one big blob. Now our state class isn't finished, but we'll come back to it a little bit later. I did notice that I did make a mistake. The states needs to be in the com.brendarelli.game package. So we'll just go ahead and move it there. So there we go. That's appropriate. Now inside Flappy Bird demo, we're going to make some global variables for our width and our height of our screen. So we're going to say, public static final int width equals 480, and public static final int height equals 800, and then public static final string title equals Flappy Bird. And then inside of our desktop launcher, we're going to edit the config here so we can change our size of our window. So config.width equals Flappy demo.width. Config.height equals Flappy demo.height. And config.title equals Flappy demo.title. And that should be good. Let's just comment all this out for now so I can show you the changes that we've made here. And so if we go ahead and run our game now, you should see that the window's height, width, and title have changed. So here we go. So we have a window that appears like a vertical phone or device with the title of Flappy Bird. So we're going to cut it there for this tutorial, and our next tutorial we'll finish our state class by implementing a game state manager, which will complete that, and we'll move on to a few other things. I hope you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. If you're feeling generous, go ahead and check out my Patreon page. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and post them below. I'm pretty good about getting back to everybody, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.